I'd like to introduce our final topic and panel, and that's around compensation. You have to pay to play. Is the model for CUSO compensation equal or similar to those in credit unions? Or do we need to pay more for specific talent? Like the Jerry McGuire theory of show me the money. I'd like to bring up our panelists now. First, on the compensation side, we have Phil Dupree, Chief Revenue Officer for Origins, joining us. Next, we have Lynn Dufresne, the Senior Account Executive at Visa. And we have, on the impact side, we have Amber Harson, the CEO of Prodigy. And our final panelist couldn't join us last minute, and so guess what, Amber? I'm joining you in this process. I know you guys are in trouble.
I brought in a ringer.
You bought a ringer.
Brought a ringer.
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm Phil Dupree. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Origins. I actually am celebrating my 6-year anniversary today, so I found a great role. So when we were talking about, thank you, when we were talking about pay to play, I have a lot of passion around compensation, the right incentive programs. I understand both sides, but I took the position, you got to pay to play. Today, there is a war on talent. And with the pandemic changes, it really changes that whole environment, right? I look at it a little like Match.com. If you're trying to find some partner within your area, you're limited. All of a sudden now, all those geographic lines disappear. And that's good for both, right? That's good for the employee, especially if you're willing to do hybrid or remote, but it's also really good for the employer because now my pool has opened. But I would tell you that I do believe that you have to be competitive, whether in a total comp, you know, we say, show me the total comp package, right? I need to look at that and understand what are those components. I know for us in the development side, we're a tech company, we're paying 10 or 15% more in the Irvine market where our corporate office is versus the Ontario market, kind of where we started. So there is a geographic play here. One of the things that our HR, and we have a great partnership with the HR, I probably have a couple of hundred staff in my org. So there's always opportunities to work with HR. Some good, some not so good. But one of the things that she's coaching us on is maybe we should have a geographic, maybe there's a factor that says if you're in California, maybe I don't pay the same that in other markets. So we're looking at that. But I do believe that you've got to put a competitive package together. One of the things that we happen to offer, I couldn't believe it when I started 6 years ago, was that we have an 8% 401k match. So, you know, as you look at the benefits, that kind of cuts through some of that clutter out there. So I do believe you got to pay to play.
I don't disagree with the statement, but I think pay doesn't always have to be compensation either. There's a cultural element that comes into play, especially when we're looking at hiring some of the tech individuals in the younger generations. A lot of my employees are looking for a mission in addition to salary. And I've had employees come in from Goldman Sachs and other very large organizations actually take less because they liked the mission of the credit union specifically. We actually train, our first week is all credit union. I train them like a credit union employee. I don't train them like a tech company just yet. That's week 2. And we have found great success with that personally, in that giving them something to believe in helps them also feel like they're contributing. In addition, I have to challenge them technically, right? My developers and my DBAs want to be able to do cool stuff. They want to work on cool tech. And making sure that we give them the space to do that is also important. So while I think fair compensation is not negotiable, right, in my regards. Livable wages, fair compensation, not something you take off the table. But I do think compensation at the CUSO level can come with the credit union heart, and you're still going to get talent.
Yeah, I clap for that. And I guess I'm on the side to pay for play, but I'm going to take a different spin because Visa obviously is just kind of a different animal, right, as a network. And our mission is to uplift everyone everywhere by being the best way to pay and be paid. And when you say the first three words, uplift everyone everywhere, I'm not sure there's any better alignment than the credit union movement. And so I've been part of the credit union movement for a lot of years. Like, I had a mortgage at 12%, so that shows how old I am. And so I think the one thing that Visa does when it comes to kind of the making sure you're making a difference is the extra stuff. And maybe I should have been on the panel before, because people were talking about vendors versus partners. And what I would say is, how many of you have like a vendor management group, or you outsource it? I'm assuming everyone's going to raise their hand, right? I'm going to challenge you to think differently and stop thinking about vendor management and start thinking about partner collaboration evaluation, because it matters. I think it was Mary Beth, right? Mary Beth said, we're a credit union that we have to look at things that can basically help us make a difference, right? And those things don't always come on balance sheet. One of the things that Visa does with our partners is we have something called a community investment fund. We actually give dollars out to the credit union to invest in any way they want to make a difference in their community. We have examples of many credit unions starting their own foundations. So they didn't have the funding prior to that. The Community Investment Fund from Visa allows them to start a foundation. But I think one of the best examples that I heard from our team is a small credit union in East Tennessee had a program where they gave lunches to underprivileged children, and they also offered a box lunch, or box dinner, excuse me. So when the child left school, they would grab a box that was dinner. When they were at school, they had free lunch. And during the pandemic, the credit union had to stop the program for various funding reasons. When the kids went back to school, the funding wasn't there. The Visa Community Fund allowed them to resurrect that program. And I'm sorry, I can't think of anything fulfilling a mission more than helping underprivileged kids in East Tennessee. So I think that's where Visa tries to make a difference, is being a true partner. And it doesn't matter at Visa what size credit union you are, a $15 million credit union in Amherst, Wisconsin, or a $15 billion credit union somewhere else in the country. We're here to make sure that we're helping you fulfill your mission by being the best, uplifting everyone everywhere. So thank you.
Sam, I believe that if that falls into that compensation line, the points you're making as well. So I think back to when I finished my MBA in 2003, and for those of you who've been in the industry for as long as that, there were sexier industries to go to work for than credit unions, especially in the lead up to the crash, right? I mean, people were making money in other places. And so most of us in this room did not come to a credit union because you're going to make lots of money. And most of you didn't stay because you're going to make lots of money. It really does come back to what we've all really been saying, in that benefits are beyond the dollars. It is about the people. It is about the service. It is about the mission. I think about Dr. Brian Branch giving me the opportunity to work with Ventura County Credit Union with the first ever domestic project in taking mobile banking to the fields and being in the trenches and watching someone who doesn't want to go into the credit union because they're filthy from working 15 hours, and being able to help that person deposit their paycheck. And I think at CUSOs, what we need to do is allow our people to get into the field and see the impact that they're making. And the fact, like when we went to Kenya and planting pineapples, that'll help sustain a community. I mean, the mission that Jonathan was speaking to, that isn't a mission because he's getting paid to do it. Dr. Brian Branch didn't fly over to Ukraine because he's getting paid to do it. We're doing it because we believe in what we do. Now, mind you, I do take an entrepreneurial spirit that we can't let our employees live in poverty, right? And I do take that entrepreneurial spirit that if we make money, then we pay more money, right? We want to make more money as well. But I think credit unions and CUSOs do not have the luxury to have entitled employees that just need comp.
We've offset that a little bit just to speak to me. And by no means I'm not advocating for all of you to do this. This is a very personal decision I made as a leader. But to help offset some of those that do want to look for comp, or it's very important to them, one of the things we committed to within my CUSO is I will never make more than 4 times my lowest paid employee personally. So in order for me to make more money, they all have to make more money, which gives us a mission when we think about motivating them to meet outcomes and strategic goals, right? That is a direct result of them being able to have, the direct result of that would be them having increased compensation. And then I, at the last person down the line, will take benefit from that when it comes due. But I think, again, thinking about creativity and compensation, there's a lot of things our credit union heart will allow us to be more creative in like that would bring people in to make them want to be part of keeping this particular movement alive and relevant and thriving and healthy, and hopefully staunch the flow of so many of us leaving.
I just wanted to comment I really, all these thoughts really do resonate with me. It's not all about the money. In my world, people are the most important asset that I have and that I work with. Is, I say it all the time, that's our secret sauce. Although it's not very secret anymore, is it? But that is what in a service org, it's our largest cost, and it is our to me, it's what makes us who we are. Again, we get the right incentive programs. I look at it as a chief revenue officer, it's a rev share, right? I tell my people, especially in sales and other areas, it is a rev share, right? Some people think, hey, I just need to make X because that's the lifestyle I'm used to. You want to show them a path. Make sure that you get the behavior you want. We've all designed comp programs, right? I'm not a micromanager. I don't agree with that philosophy. So you really need to put the gold in the right place. And we probably all had experiences where we accidentally put the gold in the wrong place and we did not get the behaviors that we wanted. So I didn't want it to sound, that it was all about the money, but I do believe you've got to be competitive to get. Because the top talent, when you work in an organization that you can really say, I've got top talent, it is a big, big difference. Because I've worked in organizations that have been had to rebuild.
I think that one of the balances that we have with that, though, is making sure that we have that top talent at bigger credit unions and at CUSOs because they can pay to have that talent, right? Is making sure that we get that intellectual capital with smaller credit unions and having access to that as well.
Yeah, and I'd make the point too that sometimes we pigeonhole and think this demographic is, what we're looking for. If it's a technology position, we're looking for someone young. And the truth is, I don't know that we live in that world anymore. And if someone walked into my credit union, if I was a CEO of a credit union, they were 70-some years old and they wanted to make a difference and they fit the core values that we had and we could make a compensation plan work, I'd take them. And I don't know that happens every day anymore. I think we do tend to sometimes pigeonhole. I heard someone say, well, older folks don't really use as much technology. I actually would disagree a little bit. I think it depends on the person. I have 80-year-old friends that are probably more tech savvy on some things than I am. And then of course I have 7-year-old nephews that it floors me, the amount they use technology. So I think it is important that we really just get to know the person and figure out, do they meet the values that we're trying to achieve, the mission that we're trying to impact? And I think that's really more critical sometimes than just, dollars and cents.
I think another creative idea that comes to mind for me is I look at how the movement is changing around credit unions and technology is enabling us as financial institutions to do more with less. Is where are all those employees at the credit unions going? Are they having to leave because their jobs don't necessarily exist, or the same career paths that existed at one point aren't there anymore? CUSOs are a really interesting place to put them. It's where I came from. I started as a drive-through credit union teller at 18. I was there for 16 years before I came to tech. As credit unions, it would be really interesting also to career path as we think about what that looks like. Why not embed some technology training and education, or if they're interested in software development, help them take those courses and get what they need, and then help them get to your partners when you don't have somewhere for them to go. They might be very talented, they might be very committed, they might be very dedicated. There's 1,000 CUSOs that would snap them up in a second because they understand credit union, and that's going to give the CUSO a competitive advantage as well. So I think just some alternatives as we think about that too.
Do we have questions? And maybe somebody can speak to this. I can't speak to it too intelligently, but I know Callahan has an employee share program where the employees actually own the organization. Does anybody know more about that? But that's something that we could look into as far as a benefit. What other questions do we have?
Okay, I have a question. What are we doing about paying our volunteers, and what's going to happen in the future if we're not getting volunteers that can drive this future, and they understand technology, that are there in a position to be able to do the things we've talked about today? What are we going to do about that? Anybody have a comment?
Well,
I'm so glad I stepped off the panel for you guys with this.
Yeah, I can't speak to
Running
the
the mic
credit
over
union
here.
industry, but I will say something creative that one of the local hospitals, I'm from Green Bay, Wisconsin, by the way. No one's talked about the NCAA, or everyone's talked about the NCAA, but please know that Wisconsin Badgers men's basketball tomorrow, or Tuesday night, semifinals, yes. They didn't fare so well this year, but hopefully they'll pull it through. But one of the hospitals in Green Bay for the volunteers, blows my mind. If you go and you, I guess it's valet park people's car for the big hospital, they actually give you free health care insurance. So imagine if you're one of those people during the pandemic that's decided it's just time for me to do early retirement, but what weighs on your mind is you're not old enough to have Medicare. This is an option, and I've talked to their CEO, he said it's crazy. Their volunteer base has exploded. So really something very creative outside of the box, and I'm sure very rewarding for the volunteers as well.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. Do you know if there's any data out there around paying CUSO executives? When I was a CUSO executive at Veridian Credit Union, my CEO called Guy Messick and said, how do we pay CUSO executives in the industry? And I think Guy's response was, there's no research, just pay him like a senior VP. And so it was as quick as that. Are you guys basing any of your pay structures around any data in the industry, or are you just doing what your own organizations have done?
We found the same thing personally. I'll just speak for my CUSO. We found the same thing when we were examining executive salaries for us, that there wasn't as much data that existed for how to compensate CUSO executives, especially tech CUSO executives, I think, because the markets are really different, right? You've probably experienced this. Software developers make more than a lot of credit union CEOs, right? Entry-level software developers make more than credit union CEOs. So I think for us, we really identified that that scale was probably not adequate over time to actually get the benefit that you might want from your technology partner CUSOs, and that you probably needed to go outside of the market and look for data around other software companies that existed. So I agree, that's actually a struggle.
I wanted to say one thing, and then we have one question in the back. But I wanted to say one thing also about Sue's question, and that is most of us as CUSOs have paid board members because they're getting paid at their own institutions, right? And they come with, they're also owners many times sitting on the board. But in our credit unions, it's a very valid point and something that we need to be thinking about if we're going to hold them to that standard. Zach, this question.
Yeah, so my mic's on? Just keep talking and then it'll come on. It's like magic. So Sue has a great question about board members, and Jen's in the room. Jen Oliver used to be our CEO at South Bay Credit Union. I've been on the board at South Bay since 2007, 8, something like that. There's only one person who's left from when I first walked onto that board, and there were 9 firefighters and me, right? Or 8 firefighters and me, right? The board was useless, right? It was all people that had the same job, did the same thing. Now there's just me and one other person left on the board, and the way we've had success doing that is going after, it's actively recruiting, it's selling. And I am a career salesperson, so it kind of comes naturally for me. But it's finding the board members with the skill set you want and approaching them. Don't wait for them to come to you. If you wait for people to come to you, you're going to get the dregs, right? Like, you don't want that. Go out and be proactive about it, or be purposeful about it. And the low-hanging fruit, or the incentive for the younger people, is resume building, right? We can't pay them in the state of California, right? You can only pay them in, what, Pennsylvania and Oregon? Indiana. Thank you, Vic. And so it's the resume builder, right? If I'm 30-something years old and I'm on my way up in my career, how good does it look on my resume to say that I'm on the board of directors of a financial institution, right? Never mind that it's 9,000 members and Chris Ody's the chairman. Don't pay attention to that, right? But I'm on the board of directors of a financial institution, and we've had some pretty good luck. Like, Jen, how old was Steven? Steven was 20-something? 20-something. We've got your current 28? Yeah, her current chief marketing officer was a board member, and that dude can't be 35, right? Oh, maybe a little older now? Okay, but when he was on the board, he was much younger. So that would be my advice on how to answer Sue's question.
Let's give this panel a nice round of applause.